text amendment, and we will go into a review session to hear that modification before we start our public hearing. So I believe to present the modification, we have Alex Stokes from our Brooklyn office. Thanks. Alex Summer, pardon me.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. So there were three substantive modifications sent back to us by the City Council. The first was a series of additional use group restrictions on the required industrial uses. These restricted additional auto-related sales and rentals, horse stables, trade schools, animal hospitals and crematoriums, poultry and rabbit killing establishments, and human crematoriums. Additional language was added to use group 17 to provide additional clarification that no diagnostic labs receiving patients would be allowed to be included in required industrial uses. This is consistent with existing zoning definitions. Second, there was some timing changes, some chronology language added to clarify that required industrial use spaces must receive a temporary certificate of occupancy prior to any incentive uses receiving a certificate of occupancy. And then some flexibility added to periodic notification by the owners, which allowed for the timing of leases to be more consistent with how spaces get occupied. And then finally, importantly, a third-party monitoring system was added, which creates new language and a new subsection in the zoning text. First, the subsection allows the city or Department of Small Business Services to select an organization to provide a third-party inspection of the required industrial use space. Secondly, the subsection identifies the specific information to be collected by this third-party service. This information includes a description of the businesses and number of employees, the total amount of required industrial use floor area that is vacant, average annual rents for the required industrial use floor area, and the number of new leases executed during that calendar year. And just to clarify, the reason why averages and increments were used was intended to protect the ability of the property owner as well as tenants to negotiate lease terms and prevent possible, for example, poaching of tenants and spaces over time. And then finally, this reporting would be provided via a form provided to either SBS or the selected third-party organization by the Department of City Planning to ensure consistency in reporting over time. And then there were some additional technical tweaks and changes to the language which were non-substantive. And that's it.
Thank you, Alex. And I believe we have determined, Council, that the proposed modifications are within scope, and we transmitted to you the actual text as soon as we got it yesterday from the City Council. So I would, any questions to Alex about this from anyone? Any questions about what the Council has proposed as modifications? Okay, hearing none, I would ask for your approval by show of hands to send a letter back to the City Council saying that these changes are within scope so that the Council can so approve. Unanimous. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Okay.
And now, Madam Secretary, we will proceed to our public hearing.
Okay. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, June 22nd, 2016.
So on the minutes, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, the minutes are approved.
Scheduling. On calendar numbers 1 through 9, we have resolutions for adoption. Scheduling Wednesday, July 27, 2016, for a public hearing to be held in Spector Hall, 22 Reade Street.
On the resolutions, may I have a
So
motion
moved.
to approve? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, the resolutions are approved.
Okay. The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 19. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 10, CD3 C160137ZMM, in the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning map concerning the East Houston Street rezoning. For a favorable report on calendar number 10, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser. Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dweck. Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 10. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 11, CD1 C160145ZSM, in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 70 Vestry Street parking facility. For a favorable report on calendar number 11, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser. Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dweck. Commissioner Edie. Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 11. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 21. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 12, CD2 N160374 BDK, a public hearing in the matter of an application concerning the formation of the DUMBO amended Business Improvement District.
First speaker is Alexandria Sika. Welcome, Ms. Sika.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for considering this application to expand the Business Improvement District serving DUMBO, Brooklyn. I'm Alexandria Sika, Executive Director of the DUMBO Improvement District. Our bid has been operating for 10 years, a time of great change for the neighborhood, which has emerged today as one of New York's most sought-after addresses, both for residents and commercial tenants, as well as for tourists. The bid has successfully helped grow this area, providing creative placemaking, public art, advocacy to restore DUMBO's Belgian block streets, daily maintenance, business services, and much, much more. We are the heart of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, the area cultivated jointly by our organization, the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, and the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we are thrilled that the former Jehovah's Witness headquarters that we are discussing today are being redeveloped into a new tech cluster. This is one of the cornerstones of our 2013 Tech Triangle Master Plan. The expansion before you today is the result of several years of discussion with these developers, Invesco, Kushner Companies, RFR, and LiveWork, and anchor tenant Etsy, who serves on our board currently, as well as our partners at SBS, Community Board 2, and City Planning. We believe that the expansion of the bid boundaries will allow us to serve this new area of the neighborhood and provide critical links to businesses currently in our district, as well as to provide services along the additional public properties that are included in the expansion area for the benefit of the entire community. Particularly, the DUMBO Heights campus is a natural extension of the district. It sits at the border of our district and helps to close the gap between DUMBO and downtown Brooklyn. It is attracting creative companies drawn to DUMBO. It has also provided much-needed office space for a number of DUMBO's growing companies who are at one point having to consider leaving the neighborhood. Several of our existing members, like Etsy and Prolific Interactive and Alexis Batar, are relocating to the campus. You will hear from both the ownership of these buildings as well as Etsy today that this is a very welcome proposal. The retail offered at the new campus will also be amenities for our existing community and vice versa. We see this as an opportunity for all in the district. Throughout the process, we have engaged in extensive outreach, securing a letter of support from the ownership earlier this year, and writing letters and emailing all known tenants of the properties as well as our existing membership. We have not heard from any in opposition. To serve the expanded district, we will increase our assessment from $650,000 annually to $835,000 annually. We have purposefully designed this increase to keep the assessment levels static for our existing members, who are now paying on average around 21 cents per square foot, and to assess the new properties at the same level. Our formula for assessment is based 50% on assessed value and 50% on commercial square footage. I do want to clarify something said said on Monday, which noted that the contingency was 15% of our budget. In fact, that is a misprint, and it was only $15,000 of the $835,000 budget, which is actually 2%. All right.
That, one more sentence, Ms. Seeger, although that was a very good
Good
point
note
to end on.
I'm happy to take questions.
That's very wise. Questions for Ms. Seeger? Any? Ms. Delos?
Ms. Seeger, how are you? Thanks for being here. With the new, with the expansion and obviously a number of new employers that are going to be in the area, one of the questions that I asked at review session that I think you would probably be able to answer, or if not someone certainly that would come after you. A lot of new jobs being brought to the area. Just wondering what kind of on-ramps are being provided to local residents that are in the area.
Sure. So we have two programs that we currently work on that I think are will speak to this point. So one is that as you know, there are several public housing projects in direct proximity to the district. For the last several years, we've been running a program with the 4th and 5th graders at the school that serves the Farragut houses. Where we bring in a dozen of our entrepreneurs and they mentor them for a week and provide it's called Big Idea Week, and the kids do a very friendly version of Shark Tank, pitching back to the entrepreneurs. It's been a wonderful program just in terms of exposure and creating those ties to the community. And we've actually recently expanded that to 20 schools throughout the city with a volunteer base of 60. We plan to keep that going. We also, as part of our Brooklyn Tech Triangle initiative with the help of the Navy Yard, we have a internship program which works with CUNY and places people into about a dozen of our companies every summer. We absolutely, we believe that the connections to local employment are important.
If I could follow up.
Certainly.
Are there any programs that specifically target adults that are unemployed or underemployed and have any specific workforce training?
Sure. So one of the programs that we work with at SBS is their Tech Talent Pipeline program, which started as part of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle program, and that's about retraining for these kinds of coding jobs. So I know SBS can speak to that a little bit further as well.
Any other questions for Ms. Seeker? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Seeker.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Blaise Backer from Small Business Services. Welcome, Commissioner. How are you?
Thank you. Well, thank you. Good morning, Chair Weisbrod and members of the Commission. I'm Blaise Backer, Deputy Commissioner for Neighborhood Development at the Department of Small Business Services. I'm joined by Chris Goddard, our Executive Director for Neighborhood Development, and Jennifer Kitson, the Director of the BID program. And we are here to testify in support of the expansion of the DUMBO Business Improvement District. As many of you know, SBS aims to connect New Yorkers to good jobs, create stronger businesses, and build a fairer economy. And in the Neighborhood Development Division, we believe ensuring the vitality of the city's commercial corridors is a key part of achieving that goal. And BIDs have been valuable and proven partners in revitalization and economic development across all 5 boroughs. In addition to our role overseeing and supporting the city's existing network of 72 BIDs, SBS also supervises the bid formation and expansion process, serving as an advisor and resource for communities interested in developing or expanding bids. We are careful to ensure that each steering committee we work with adheres to our planning process and policies, solicits robust community input, and performs extensive outreach to collect and demonstrate broad-based support across all stakeholder groups. Moreover, we are cognizant of the unique nature of each community we assist and aim to empower local stakeholders to make determinations on proposed services, boundaries, and budget size that best suit their community's needs and the appetite and ability to pay the assessment. While we always impart strong planning principles and share our data and best practices from across the BID network when working with each individual bid formation or expansion effort, we recognize that the power and effectiveness of bids rests in their unmatched understanding of local needs and issues. The DUMBO expansion is concentrated on 11 properties and 7 blocks and has received strong written support from stakeholders in the community. This includes a signed statement from representatives of the DUMBO Heights properties and documented support from current and incoming commercial tenants in the expansion area. After an extensive outreach effort and close coordination with all key parties, SBS determined that the documented support among all stakeholder groups, including 97% of the area's commercial assessed value provided to us in written support, was sufficient to submit the application to city planning. It's also important to note that this bid expansion proposal received the written support of Councilmember Stephen Levin and approval from Brooklyn Community Board 2. In addition to the Dumbo Improvement District staff, Alexandria, who you've heard from, I'd also like to acknowledge that the bid expansion effort is represented here from current bid board stakeholders as well as tenants in the proposed expansion area. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Backer. Questions for Mr. Backer? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ian Pomerantz.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Ian Pomerantz. I'm here representing the development known as DUMBO Heights. The landlord includes Invesco, RFR Realty, Kushner Companies, and Live Work. This development partnership enthusiastically supports the expansion of the DUMBO Business Improvement District to include the DUMBO Heights properties. These 5 buildings are establishing a mixed-use urban campus in the heart of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle. DUMBO Heights aims to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and culture through unrivaled connectivity and creativity. So far, 4 of the 5 properties are operational, with 2 properties fully occupied. In one property, WeWork is leading the charge in the dynamic shared work environment. In another, Etsy has their global headquarters, where they are influencing the art and design scene around the world through their internet workshops and online arts and crafts sales. 2 smaller tenants are Renaissance Learning and Prolific Interactive. Renaissance Learning is a cloud-based educator with online workshops and analysis. Prolific Interactive assists their clients with creating applications for their companies so they can stay active in today's mobile platform-driven world. Rounding out the development is a diverse array of small businesses at the ground levels. The retail businesses consist of exercise facilities and food and beverage outlets. Our fitness tenants are Shadowbox, Row House, and Yoga Vita. These facilities are themed around synchronized boxing, rowing exercises, and immersive yoga experiences, respectively. If fitness is not your thing, and you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, we will have a brand new state-of-the-art brewery called Randolph Brewery. There will be Bluestone Cafe and Husk Commissary, which are brother and sister properties that perform their own baking and coffee roasting on site. We also have Dig-In Sandwiches, Taco Taco, and Glazed Teriyaki, to name a few places to grab a snack, with more on the way. Planning with the bid for the expansion phase from an operational perspective has begun. We are looking forward to working with the street cleaning crew, the Doe Fund, and the bid's promotional team. We are excited to be active members of the bid board of directors and the entire DUMBO community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pomerantz. Questions? I don't think people want to reveal which side of the divide they're on. So, thank you. That is true. Thank you, Mr. Pomerantz. Next speaker is Josh Wise from Etsy.
Morning, Chairman Weisbrod and members of the City Planning Commission. My name is Josh Wise. I'm the Global Director of Workplace Ecology and Design at Etsy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of the DUMBO bid expansion. Etsy is a marketplace where people around the world connect both online and offline to make, sell, and buy unique goods. Etsy began in a Brooklyn apartment in 2005 and has evolved into a sophisticated technology platform that connects Etsy sellers and buyers across borders, languages, and devices. With over 850 employees worldwide, we're a company that spans the globe and a business that is committed to creating lasting change in the world. Etsy was born and bred in Brooklyn with deep roots in the DUMBO business community. Our CEO, Chad Dickerson, has been a member of the DUMBO Business Improvement District's Board of Directors since 2006 and was a leader in the bid's efforts to form the Brooklyn Tech Triangle alongside the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Just 2 months ago, we moved a few blocks up the hill to our new global headquarters located at 117 Adams Street, where we occupy roughly 200,000 square feet of office space. The move to this new location created exciting opportunities to reimagine a sustainable workplace that would support our employees and the DUMBO community we call home. As part of the building renovation, we participated in the Living Building Challenge, which is the most advanced sustainability certification program for the built environment. Our new headquarters is furnished with more than 750 pieces of furniture and light fixtures from small and micro businesses here in New York City, and our global food program offers a twice-weekly communal meal catered by local eateries and vendors. The rest of the week, employees are encouraged to support our neighborhood lunch spots, mentioned by Ian, On summer days like this, you can always find a crowd of Etsy staff under the archway for a good meal. Etsy has supported a proposed expansion of the DUMBO bid since we made the decision to move just outside of the district's current boundaries from our previous HQ located at 55 Washington Street. The bid has played an important role in keeping the neighborhood clean and desirable, and we're constantly collaborating on new initiatives to engage the community and local businesses. Just last month, we partnered with the DUMBO bid in hosting our annual craft party, which included a spotlight on several local businesses to celebrate and encourage creativity in our local economy. With innovative public art exhibitions, interactive events, and incredible business promotion, the bid creates a neighborhood where Etsy and our employees thrive. We're excited to see other companies make the move up the hill or relocate entirely to Dumbo Heights. The bid's thoughtful and fair approach to assess the new building at the same rate currently paid by existing bid members speaks to the true value they put on placemaking. At roughly 21 cents per square foot per year, the bid is an invaluable investment that will only bolster the Tech Triangle's appeal to future partners and support local businesses that make the neighborhood such a desirable place to start and grow a business. Expanding the Dumbo bid is both logical and timely. It will ensure the integration of a growing new commercial center and allow employees, residents, and visitors to fully benefit from the creative ecosystem that it helps create. Thank you for the opportunity to share our support of this expansion, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Questions for Mr. Wise? Ms. Efron, then Ms. Levin.
Hi, in your 200,000 square feet, how many people do you intend to employ when fully occupied? And do you have any sense of how many of those are within walking distance of your operation?
Well, based on seating strategy, I can tell you that currently we are in the neighborhood of 500 employees at our last reporting, and we continue to expand significantly in that existing space. That total number is dependent upon our actual seating strategy and how we sort of configure over the term, but the idea is to continue to expand greatly in there. In terms of walking employees, I do know that we have a significant number. That's something I could return to you on.
It's not relevant to the question at hand. I was just taking the opportunity to understand a local employer of your scale and what the demographics are. So
Yeah, no, there are an enormous number of walking and biking employees. I myself do both from time to time.
Thank
so.
you.
Ms. Levin. I had the same question. Any other questions for Mr. Wise? Thank you very much, Mr.
All right,
Wise.
thank you.
Next speaker is David Lombino.
Perfect time.
Welcome, Mr.
Good morning,
Lombino.
Commissioners. Thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of Two Trees Management. We're obviously a member of the Board of Directors of the Dumbo Bid, one of its founding members. We currently own roughly 30% of the properties that that make up the assessment for the Dumbo Bid. Quickly, I think this is a terrific step forward. When something works really well, you generally want to expand it to surrounding areas or buildings. The story of the Watchtower buildings you all know well. They were very isolated with respect to the rest of what has been going on in Dumbo for at least the last 15 years. Not on the tax rolls, not engaged in the community, a very, very different in terms of uses, different in terms of orientation towards the community. That is about to change, which I think is already changing, and I think this is the next step, which is very exciting. The Dumbo Bid has been spectacular at knitting together the different pieces of the mixed-use neighborhood in Dumbo, bringing culture, bringing public art, bringing event space, creating an identity for this terrific commercial tenant base that we have. As you know from walking down there, it's an exciting, energetic, youthful place between the hours during business hours, which makes it distinct from many other residential areas that have grown up in recent years outside of Manhattan. So I think the inclusion of these buildings into the Dumbo Bid is really a terrific step and will help knit together everything that's going on there. So we fully support it.
Thank you, Ms. Lombino. Questions, Ms. Lombino? Ms. Levin.
Well, I guess I'd be interested in your answer to the similar question that Commissioner Efron put, and that is, what's your sense of how many people who work in the neighborhood are able to live there, and how many people who live there are able to find work there, vice versa? I mean, overall.
People who live in Dumbo, it's changed in the last, 5 years. In terms of the rental stock, I think, we have about 1,000 rentals in the neighborhood. I think that many of those residents commute into Manhattan, and those that can stay in Brooklyn. I think that's one of the reasons why it's important that we can continue to grow the commercial sector in Brooklyn, because I think if you asked every single person that got on the F train or the A train or the ferry in the morning, they would prefer to stay closer to home. And that definitely holds true to other areas of the Brooklyn and Queens waterfront, Williamsburg, and elsewhere as well.
Well, we have another hearing coming up later this morning on exactly that topic, 420 LB Square, so,
Oh, terrific.
commercial tower. Thank you.
Yeah. One other thing I forgot to note, we're very excited. Last time, or recently, we came before this commission a few years ago now at 60 Water Street. That building, is fully leased up, and actually the school that this commission helped include as part of that project, a public middle school, the Dock Street School for STEAM Studies will open in September there with up to 330 seats. They have 110 enrolled for this fall, and it's a great addition to the neighborhood. Finally, a public middle school that draws from the entire district, and something, again, we know there are other areas in Brooklyn downtown in particular where there's a lot of demand for school seats, and we think we validated that concept with that building at 60 Water.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lambino? Ms. Delos?
David, good to see you. Well, that brings up a question, actually, and you're right, it's great that the Dock Street School is going to be open. I know folks have, very much anticipating it, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but this space does put back Community District 2, and that particular school district has a really significant need for school seats. Do you know of any conversation with the current owners, with the SCA, about trying to locate a school within the space that's being expanded in Dumbo Heights?
I don't. I mean, if at some point they chose to pursue, rezoning, I assume that would be a topic of conversation at that time. I do not know of any plans to, but I think that'd be a good time to bring that up.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Ms. Lambino? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Lambino.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 13, CD1, N160381, PXM. A public hearing in the matter of a notice of intent to acquire office space for use of property located at 40 Rector Street.
First speaker is Inspector Kevin Burke.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Burke. I'm the Deputy Inspector with the New York City Police Department, and I'm currently the Commanding Officer of the NYPD World Trade Center Command. On September 12, 2011, the newly commissioned World Trade Center Command was tasked with protecting the World Trade Center campus, a location that continues to be a primary target for terrorists, both domestic and abroad. The World Trade Center campus encompasses the National 9/11 Memorial Plaza and the museum, One World Trade, 4 World Trade, 7 World Trade, along with the new transit hub and several other buildings that are currently still under construction. The boundaries of the World Trade Center Command extend from the north side of Murray Street between West Street and Broadway to the north side of Rector Street from West Street to Broadway. Approximately 5 million visitors come to the site every year. The World Trade Center Command is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. Together with the Port Authority Police, our officers conduct daily counterterrorism operations to provide a safe environment to tourists, residents, commercial tenants, and small businesses within the World Trade Center campus. 174 uniformed members and 5 civilian members assigned to the World Trade Center work out of 19 Varick Street, which is located approximately 3/4 of a mile from the World Trade Center campus. The distance between our primary command and the site causes a challenge to our officers as it relates to administrative functions and tactical responses to emergencies. Because of this, for the past 5 years, the department has provided our officers with a substation at 130 Cedar Street. The location has been used by our officers as a satellite to ensure efficient police services and quicker response times to all emergencies that have occurred at the World Trade Center campus. On a typical day, it is staffed by approximately 40 officers per tour. Unfortunately, our lease at the location will be expiring in December 2016. Currently, we are looking at 40 Rector as our new substation. Its close proximity to the World Trade Center site and size make it a perfect fit for our needs.
Thank you, Inspector. Questions for Inspector Berg? Mr. Dwight.
Just a question that I brought up at the review session on Monday. Can you give us the operational efficiencies of having the space located on the ground floor and how it benefits your command?
We're just looking to have a presence. We want it to be known that we're here protecting the site. We're available to the public to walk in. Any crime complaints that the general would be an active police station in that sense.
So in essence, being on the ground floor makes your job, your job easier and
Absolutely. Visibility and presence and letting the community know that we're there.
very good. Thank you.
Mr. Knuckles.
Thank you. Inspector, this operation was slated to go to another location. I think it was south of Rector Street,
90 West Street.
90 West Street,
Correct.
yes. Without revealing what doesn't need to be revealed, we're just wondering what happened with that
It's my
location.
understanding we lost out to a gym. They decided the lessors wanted to place a gym at the location, so it currently serves as a gym for the residents of 90 West.
I see. Thank you.
At least it wasn't a brewery.
Ms. Efron.
Thank you. At the hearing for 90 West Street, there was some discussion about how the windows on the retail level would be treated so that the passersby wouldn't just see a blank wall. Could you share with us your plans for how to enliven the street for pedestrians
We're
and
looking
make
for
your
the windows
presence
to
known?
be ballistic rated that we're going to pay for. It'll be emblazoned with NYPD symbols of the department, but open to the public in the sense visible, possibly shades, things of that nature, but there won't be any blackout type of window treatment.
Thank you.
And with respect to this location compared to 90 West, is this, in your view, operationally as effective a location given the mission of?
We've been on a search for a significant amount of time, and this is the best place, given the availability at the location in Lower Manhattan and in the area.
Thank you. Any other questions for the inspector? Thank you,
Thanks for
Inspector.
being
Next speaker is Dale Lazarson from DCAS.
Good morning, Commissioner. Okay, so as you just heard, this 195 notice in front of you is for the acquisition of office space at 40 Rector to serve the World Trade Center Command Post. I'll give you a little bit of background about the acquisition. This will be approximately 5,000 square feet on the ground floor. This site, 40 Rector, this particular ground floor space is at the corner of Washington and Rector. 40 Rector has a primary entrance on Rector, however, the police department's entrance will be on Washington, and it is exclusive to the police department, so it will not disturb the rest of the building. The building itself is 19 stories, about 550,000 square feet. It is, as of 2011, it is comprised of 22 condominiums. I believe that floors 15 through 19 are actually available for sale, potentially lease, but in any event, the building owner, the sponsor is Phillips International. The condo owner, for us, this will be a private lease. The condo owner is the China Institute, which is a nonprofit organization focused on the education to individuals and businesses about China's culture and U.S. relations. And a little bit of trivia, principal involvement from the China Institute includes the president of operations, a businessman by the name of James Hamowitz. He's very well known, and he is actually recognized for helping further how China is viewed internationally and with U.S. relations. Also, a bit of trivia, the chairman of the board for the China Institute is the son of the world-renowned architect I.M. Pei. And speaking of breweries, across the street is a brewery, actually, so that will remain in the neighborhood. And one last thing on Greenwich, 88 Greenwich, right across the street as well, the new 911 Memorial Tribute Center will be opening. They're currently on Liberty, and they have a larger expanded space of about 35,000 square feet going in across the way. So the location, to your question, is terrific. It will provide a very nice presence for the NYPD. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Laverson? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 14, CD5, N160382, PXM. A public hearing in the matter of a notice of intent to acquire office space for use of property located at 230 Park Avenue.
First speaker is Tom Lotito from the Office of Court Administration. Mr. Lotito, what does AC stand for?
Excuse me?
AC stands for,
I didn't go, where is AC mentioned?
you put it on your card, AC, Tom, Assistant
Oh, I
Commissioner?
think someone else might have put that on there for me.
Uh-oh.
I'm the Director of Court Facilities for the Unified Court System.
Aha, okay.
And good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good
and
morning.
Commissioners. I'm here to speak in favor of the acquisition, the application before you for the acquisition of office space at 230 Park Avenue, which will be utilized by the most recently appointed Associate Judge of the Court of Appeals. It'll be occupied by the judge himself and his staff, which varies from another five to six people, so we'll be averaging approximately 7 people there for purely office-type work. The location works very well for us because the chief judge of the state of New York has been in 230 Park Avenue, coincidentally, for, I believe, well over 20 years. And we have always tried to work with DCAS to find the home chambers for judges in close proximity to that building or within. One of the reasons for that is the judges, in addition to working closely together up there, sometimes work, hand in hand when they're down here. But it's in our favor to have them close to one another, and at the beginning and the end of each session up in Albany, all files and records relating to the cases are delivered to and from the individual chambers of the judges. And as far as why DCAS is looking for the space for the New York State Court of Appeals, there is New York State law which requires the local municipalities to provide space for us. Depending on the type of court and the court's jurisdiction, the state court system will reimburse the city a certain percentage of the cost of maintaining that space. In the case of the Court of Appeals, since it has a jurisdiction that expands well beyond New York City, the Office of Court Administration will reimburse the city of New York 100% for all costs in terms of acquisition, rent, maintenance, for the duration of our occupation.
Thank you.
Well, any questions from anyone?
Any questions for Mr. Lotito? Mr. Dweck?
I had a question on Monday about the size, 5,000 square feet, and there were 7 full-time employees. Is that commensurate with other spaces?
What's happened, we are actually, it is a little bit larger than some of the others, but we are growing. This is, right now, the judges have 3 clerks. We seem to be going towards 4. And also the layout of this particular space, it's an odd layout. And given the other locations that were available to us, DCAS and ourselves thought that the utilization of that space worked best. Well,
I knew that would trigger a question from Ms. Levin.
No, not even that question. No.
Aha.
No, I'm just curious, how many of the justices are based here in Manhattan? I guess the justice being replaced was actually based up in Albany?
the justice being replaced was, no, not in Albany. I believe
Or
that
upstate?
she was from somewhere upstate.
Yeah, yeah. So, but guess my question is, does every one of the justices have an office in Manhattan? Is Manhattan the operational
No, I
seat
understand-
of the court?
I understand what you're asking.
What happens in
No,
Albany and
there
what
are-
happens in
right now-
Manhattan?
Right now, there are 7, there are always 7 Court of Appeals judges. Right now, 4 of them are based in New York City. In my 30-plus years of working for the court system and the city of New York, it's the first time we've had 4. We will often ask, why can they not be together? Why can we try to economize both for ourselves and the city by putting them all in the same place? Unfortunately, the answer is, we never know who the governor is going to appoint. He may appoint a judge from, right now we have 2 from Buffalo, and I don't think we've ever had 2 from Buffalo. And also, depending on the judges' ages and the mandatory retirement age, it could be that we could have the 4 of them in the same place today. One of them retires, a year or 2 from now for whatever reason. And
And you get someone who's
collectively, we're
Schenectady.
stuck with the
Right,
space, yes.
right. Thank you.
Mr. Dwyer.
Follow-up question. So the judge who vacated her position was from upstate, you said. What happens with her chambers?
Well, that lease upstate was with, I don't remember which county it was. It could have been Rochester or it could have been Syracuse. That lease was held by the local municipality up there, and they typically have agreements, as the city's leases do, to terminate the lease at some point in time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to, it actually raises 2 questions with me. Are the leases that you enter into, or DCAS enters into on your behalf, congruent with the term of the judge?
Yes, and they are as close as possible, yes.
And
Sometimes the landlord does not allow us to go the full tenure of the judge.
And given the fact that there are now 4 Court of Appeals judges in New York City, are they all located in this building? Is that?
No, the chief judge is in this building. Hopefully, the Judge Garcia, the judge in question, would like to be in that building. The other 2 are at 420 Lex and 570 Lex, which each one is within a block or 2 away. Which is, again, consistent with our preference, given the things that come back and forth.
I think we recently did the 420 Lex.
It's been about 3 or 4 years since we've done that, yes. That's recent
Time
for a
flies.
lot of us, yes.
Any other questions for Ms. Lotito? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we welcome back Ms. Lazarson.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the real estate transaction to support this particular need. This will be for approximately 5,600 square feet. This will be on the 15th floor of the building 230 Park Avenue, which is also known as the Helmsley Building. The lease term will be for 15 years. If interested, I'll pass it around, but I'm going to ask for it back. I think this would be an interesting visual for you. This is the layout proposed for the office, so I'll just pass it around. It actually speaks a little bit to the utilization. It's a little bit of an awkward space. But another question on the utilization in general. Some of these older buildings, it's interesting. When they were built, this building was built in 1929, renovated in 2004, I believe. They have very large corridors. When you take a large corridor and you multi-tenant it, the loss factor increases dramatically.
Yeah,
So the loss factor here is in the mid to upper 30%. So again, that's why I wanted to share the floor plan with you. It's very well laid out for the awkward space that it is in general. Okay, so may I answer any questions about the real estate?
Ms. Efron.
How much time is left on the lease of the head judge, chief judge?
That actually is coming up now, and we will be negotiating a renewal for it shortly. I believe it's coming up within the next 12 months or so, if not currently upon us. We have a team working on that.
So that wasn't the same length of appointment as I'm just trying to understand what the previous speaker spoke about with regard to length of term, and also trying to get my mind around why these are in Midtown. But
So I think that the issue of why they're in Midtown may be a little bit of a legacy issue, a little bit of an interest issue. About the length of term for the chief judge space, that particular lease is coming up. We are in dialogue about it, but the new chief judge actually, since it was an existing space and is familiar with it, is actually comfortable going back into that space. So relocating from the space, the preference is there. It's fairly built out to, the Court of Appeals standards. So it just made sense to allow the chief to go there if they wanted to, and I believe that that is the desire. In Midtown in general, so probably proximity to the trains and other reasons of why they're located there. There's, of the 393 million square feet in Manhattan, Midtown has about 60% of the commercial office supply. So, specifically this area, it may just be a legacy issue. I really can't speak toward that. We do site search and in looking for other spaces, particularly when leases are coming up. We look around the search parameters requested. Thanks.
I mean, this is really probably more of a question for Ms. Lotito, I suppose, since we're simply acting as the city is simply acting as the agent for the Office of Court Administration. But it does occur to me that I had thought that the advantage of being around the Grand Central Station was that the train to Albany went from Grand Central, but in fact it goes from Penn Station. Is that correct? So shouldn't they all really be on the west side and around Penn Station? Doesn't that be the most convenient place for them to gather?
Well, I can offer that
Well, the rents are cheaper, by the way.
Sometimes. With Midtown in general, all areas of Midtown commercial being about 60% of that supply I just mentioned, and the vacancy rate currently hovering around 7%, finding small space needed can be challenging sometimes. But again, I can't necessarily speak. I thought it was about the trains. You bring up a good point. I can get back to you if you'd like on a specific answer, but maybe a little bit of a legacy issue.
Ms. Efron.
Sorry, you just said small spaces, but it sounds as if these two leases are going to be negotiated and renegotiated at virtually the same time within a year of each other. So it's actually potentially a larger space, right?
Well, they are completely separate leases, so individually they're not being consolidated or anything, but they're too small. Yeah, I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's not a lot of small space. We are very fortunate, actually, to go back into the space where the chief judge is. We didn't have to necessarily site search, although we did for some comparisons. And for Judge Garcia, we actually did a site search, and one of the very few small spaces that came up meeting some of our criteria for the courts actually was in this building. And so all things being equal, size, cost, et cetera, made sense for the proximity of Judge Garcia to be in the same building as the chief judge.
Mr. Dweck.
Just a follow-up question. You had mentioned that the term of the lease is 15 years. I'm not familiar, but how long is the term of the appointment of the judge?
That I don't know, but I believe, I don't know actually. I don't know, I can't find out.
Okay, and then assuming that for some reason the judge vacates the space prior to the 15-year, is there a termination clause? And if not, who is on the hook for the payments? Would it then be shifted to New York City versus the unified court system? Or does the unified court system continue to reimburse New York City for the lease?
Well, as the lease itself hasn't been executed yet, and I think some terms are still being worked out, typically the city will always have a city standard termination. Whether or not that's available in this particular building is to be determined. But in terms of any city lease, we always have the right to backfill with other city-related agencies. In terms of cost, however, since, as Mr. Latita spoke, the cost is being picked up by the Court of Appeals, so they are on the hook for the term that ultimately we present to them, for the entire transaction we present to them. So I think that they will understand that they will remain on the hook for that. They will remain responsible for participating.
And that's a legal obligation, not just a goodwill obligation.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Lazarson? I think we've exhausted the topic as best we can. Thank you, Ms. Lazarson. And is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the hearing is closed. They can always appeal, yes. See the court.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 15, CD4, N160069 ZRM, a public hearing in the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning resolution concerning 625 West 57th Street.
The first speaker is Wesley O'Brien from the Durst Organization. And just to note that Commissioner Cerullo is recused on this matter.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Wesley O'Brien of Freed Frank. I'm here representing the applicant, Durst Organization, the Durst Pyramid LLC. This is an application requesting the creation of a new sub-area in the Special Clinton District, comprised of the block between West 57th and West 58th Street, 11th Avenue, and the West Side Highway. Shown here. And also to allow auto repair uses in conjunction with auto showrooms at this location. Many of you are no doubt familiar with this location, as the site has been the subject of several City Planning Commission applications in recent years, including most recently the 2012 special permits and zoning map amendments, which facilitated construction of the VIA building. So since 2012, the 31-story, approximately 760,000 square foot VIA building has been constructed, shown in the image all the way to my right, and residents are now beginning to occupy the building. The space that we've been focusing on for this application is the ground floor space of the building. It's 35,000 square foot space. You can see in this image here, facing the West Side Highway, or shown here with 58th Street, 57th Street, and the West Side Highway. Ground floor space that we believe would be up to 35,000 square feet of showroom, including in the center here, 15,000 square feet of auto repair uses. The site is zoned C47 and C62. In these districts, use group 9 auto repair, auto showroom uses are permitted as of right, but repair services and preparation of vehicles for delivery are not permitted uses. So the proposed text amendment would allow for repair services at this location. We note that auto showroom and repair facilities would be consistent with the character of the area, with the nearby automobile row along 11th Avenue in the West 40s and 50s, and that similar zoning text has been adopted to permit auto repairs at the Mercedes House. It's at 11th Avenue between West 57th and West 54th Street, rather West 53rd and West 54th Street, at TF Cornerstone's 606 West 57th Street site, directly south of this location, at the Riverside Center South, just to the north, and at the Moynihan South, located at 605 West 42nd Street. So given the character of the area, the site's adjacency to the West Side Highway, the Con Ed power plant to the north, the Department of Sanitation garage just to the south, we believe that an auto showroom and repair facility at this location would be appropriate use. I thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions to Mr. O'Brien? Mr. Cantor.
Good morning. Is this a condo or a rental?
It is a rental building.
Rental.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, Mr. O'Brien? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, good morning, Wesley. We read in the Wall Street Journal, I guess it was on Monday, that in fact there's a different plan for this space. Can you fill us in on those plans and, why it is you're moving forward with this application? And for both uses, I'm curious about how much other retail will be in the building, this looks like it's only a portion, and about the streetscape impact of either an auto showroom or the potential movie theater, because as we took these through the public review process, having activity on those sidewalks was a very important part of our consideration.
So as you read, there will be a tenant that's going to occupy the vast majority of the space, Landmark Theater. We're very excited about Landmark Theater moving into that space. When we began the process about a year and a half ago, we had conversations with a number of auto dealers who were interested in the space, provided that the repair uses would be permitted as well. Durst organization is planning to hold this property, anticipates holding this property in the long term. So we believe still that an auto showroom as a potential future use is appropriate at this location. Given the work to date, we'd like to continue with the
Keep on
application.
going, okay.
Your second question, though, about retail at this location and the impacts. So as a condition to the special permit, and this may be what you were calling in 2012, there was a requirement that at least 3 individual retail spaces be provided along 57th Street. That requirement is still valid, it will still be met. This space far to the west is yet an additional retail space, or in this instance, a theater that will be occupied. As far as the streetscape impacts, so in addition to providing those retail uses, in the event that there is an auto showroom, we believe that it would be showroom at the perimeter, glazing in all areas. The use that we're requesting permission for, the auto repair use, would be in the center of the building and would be entered through already permitted curb cuts on the north side of the building, which if you spend a bunch of time on the street, it's rather quiet, facing the Con Ed plant, and the elevated ramp to the highway there.
Any other questions for Ms. Efron?
Just because we have you and there is a new use proposed, is there any plan by Durst, which has been quite advanced in environmentally favorable transportation, to have extra bike storage or other things that would encourage this site to be used by those, if it is a movie theater, coming by bicycle, since public transportation there is less than great?
If I'm understanding your question, it's whether there's anything to encourage public transit and bicycles to the theater?
Yeah, it's really just sort of a friendly reminder that if it isn't an auto showroom, it really is a great opportunity for extra bike facilities or other things, so that a neighborhood could actually have a community movie theater where people could travel by bike, since public transportation is less than great. Perhaps that's for your client and not for you. It's not really a question as much as a comment.
So I'm not aware of any specific requirements on the landmark theater that would be there. However, Durst organization, of course, is a leader in the environmental field and is doing quite a lot in this building to maintain a green building.
Any other questions, Mr. O'Brien? Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Sure, and Chairman, Jonathan Drescher of the Durst organization is here. He signed up as the next speaker.
Mr. Drescher?
However, unless there are further questions about the application, we would conclude here without further presentation.
Mr. Drescher is waiving his right to speak. So be it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? And hearing none, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 16, CD7, C160247, PQQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the acquisition of property concerning the Mitchell-Linden Library site.
First speaker is Louis Finkelman from the Queens Library System. Welcome, Mr. Finkelman.
Good morning. I'm Louis Finkelman. I'm the General Counsel for the Queensborough Public Library. I'm here in support of the application. The Mitchell-Linden Community Library has been in its current location since 2012. The library purchased the property back then because the prior rental space that had been used for a library in that community was in extremely poor condition, and the landlord had given notice to the library that he intended on demolishing the premises and redeveloping the property. The library paid $3.5 million at that point in time to acquire the property, and the backdrop to this, I should say, is a 1907 agreement between the city and the Queens Library. And the model that's set up contemplates city ownership of the property and the library actually operating the libraries, with the city having the obligation for capital improvements and what have you. So The vast majority of the libraries in Queens are in fact owned by the city of New York. This is one of 3 exceptions. The other one you'll hear about right after. So this is a pretty straightforward application at the time that, and I might add that the Board of Trustees for the Queens Library back in 2012, when this acquisition was approved, there were 19 voting trustees on the board, all appointed by the mayor and/or the Queensborough president. There were 5 ex officio trustees that include the mayor, the controller, the public advocate, the speaker, and the Queensborough president. I looked at the agenda item when this was approved, and it explicitly referenced the fact that the city would ultimately acquire the property. So that's pretty much the application and what it entails. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Finkelman?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Dela Uz.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for being here.
Sure.
So is the city acquiring it from the library for the same purchase price that you all paid for in 2012, or is it based on a newly appraised?
Let me preface by saying I've been with the Queens Library a year.
Okay. We blame,
I'm a
no
lawyer by
blame on
trade,
you.
sorry. But my understanding is the precedent has been, on the occasions where the city has purchased property in the past from the library, that the library has received fair market value at the time of the purchase. But I'm sure that's an issue that I will be discussing with OMB and DCAS.
Okay, leave it at that, great. Okay.
So just to follow up on Commissioner Dela's question, the purchase price has been determined now, or not?
No, I don't believe so. I think DCAS is still going through the appraisal process, but I think you'll hear from them on that issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Levin.
Well, Len, just to continue that a little bit further, and given your short tenure with the library, perhaps you don't necessarily have the answer, but when an acquisition like this is being discussed by the library board, knowing that ultimately the plan will be to sell it on to the city, what conversation is there between the library board? Notwithstanding the fact there are plenty of public representatives on the library board, when they're speaking for the library board, they're exercising their fiduciary responsibilities to the library, not necessarily to the city. Is there a separate conversation that goes on between the library and OMB about the commitment of public funds that's implicit here, if the plan is that the city's going to take it over?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to this specific transaction, obviously, but I mean, at the end of the day, what the funds that are used for a purchase like this, it would have been city operating funds. And I think that's one of the big issues. I mean, what happened is the library fronted funds that really should have been used for the operation of the libraries to purchase property. And I would assume there would have been discussions with OMB regarding expending $3.5 million of operating funds to purchase property. So honestly, I can't stand here and vouch that those conversations took place, but I would assume that they did. And like I said, this is the very rare exception. It's certainly not the norm. There's only 3 properties at this point in time that the library owns, and we most certainly want to transfer them ownership to the city.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dweck.
Just to, I'm almost positive the answer is yes, but I'd like to hear it. So the library board at the time took all the appropriate steps according to their guidelines in purchasing the property, and they actually did an appraisal at the time. Can you give us a little bit about the process and how they came to the acquisition price?
Yeah, I mean, as you duly noted, there was an appraisal done by an outside real estate consultant.
And the real estate committee, then, did the real estate committee of the library vote on it?
Yeah, it would have gone through the Building and Grounds Committee to review and then recommend the purchase of the property to the full board. And then the full board would have to then take a vote of all of the members.
And you've got that documented that
Oh,
all the
yes.
proper procedures were?
Yeah, they're in the minutes of meetings that occurred at the time.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I mean, I realize you've only been at the library a year, and as between 2012 and 2016, there's been a tumultuous history at
Yes.
the Queens Library. And I guess my question, I'm not sure there's an answer to this question, or whether you can answer this question, or DCAS can answer this question, or anybody can really answer this question, is to what extent, if at all, has the 2012 acquisition been reviewed in light of the, by the current administration at the public library, in light of the history over the last 4 years?
I can answer it this way. I certainly, I've worked for the city for over 25 years. I have a good reputation. I can tell you I wouldn't be up here testifying on behalf of this if I didn't check the records of the library to make sure. I looked at the appraisal. I looked at the board records. There's no indication that anything untoward occurred. I think it's public knowledge that the library has been the subject of a U.S. Attorney's investigation that started back at the beginning of 2014. I know the documents that were produced in response to the subpoenas. I can unequivocally tell you none of them involved this particular real estate transaction. So I would hope that gives you some comfort that this seemed, by all appearances and all the records I've seen, a pretty straightforward real estate acquisition for a reasonable price.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Delarose.
I just want to highlight something you said. So they were, at the time in 2012, the library was in a space where the landlord chose not to extend. And so it was a situation where the board had to act quickly to find a new location.
Yeah, I think it was worse than that. My understanding is the space was actually in horrible condition, as well as the fact that the landlord was indicating that he had no desire to continue having the library as a tenant beyond a short period of time. So I think it's a combination of those two factors that led to expeditiously acquiring separate property.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Finkelman? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Efron.
Even in your year experience, but otherwise asking around, this space has been working well as a public library,
Oh,
correct?
yes, in fact, my understanding is it's the 8th largest in terms of population. It's in Flushing. It's widely used. It's has great programs. So
Thank
yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Finkelman.
Be back.
We also have Paul Costa here from DCAS, and
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners.
good morning, Mr. Costa.
Just to address the acquisition piece, this is very similar to all of our other acquisitions where we're acquiring private property for city use, except it's the Queens Public Library who we're acquiring it for, who will be using it. We'll do the same as we do for private property. We get an appraisal, and our acquisitions group negotiates with the owner for a fair market value. And we will do the same with the Queens Public Library.
So the purchase price in 2012 was
I believe it was
$3.5
$3.5
million.
million.
And you don't know yet what the appraised value is?
No, we do not have the appraisal complete yet.
Who's doing the appraisal, DCAS?
Yeah, it's done in-house with our appraisal unit.
Mr. Eady.
So in other words, this is treated like an arm's length transaction with any other, like any other third party
Yeah,
transaction?
pretty much any other transaction we would do with a private.
And so in other words, the 2012 appraisal or purchase price doesn't really directly factor into?
No,
the
no,
current
we would do it a whole
transaction?
new appraisal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And presumably, if the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price in 2012, the city pays the lower amount.
Yeah, we would pay what the appraisal amount is.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do you want to say anything else, Mr. Costa?
Oh, no, that's it, just happy.
Any other questions to Mr. Costa? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? And if not, the hearing is closed. And
Borough of Queens, calendar number 17, CD 13, C160248, PQQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for an acquisition of property concerning Rosedale Library site.
Welcome back, Mr. Finkelman. Long time no see, so.
Morning, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Louis Finkelman, General Counsel for the Queensborough Public Library, and I'm here to testify in favor of the application of selling the Rosedale Library to the city. I won't bore you with the same details I just previously gave you, but this is a library that actually has been operating at the location since 1962. It had been subject to a rather long-term lease, which gave the library the option, a 14-day option to purchase the property if the landlord sought to sell it. The landlord
14 days?
14 days. Yeah, I guess back in the 60s, people negotiated terms like that. But in any event, the landlord gave notice to the library that he was going to sell the property. He got an offer of $800,000 that the library had 14 days to decide whether to match. Led to a special meeting of the Board of Trustees, since typically they occur in a 30-day period. And the library exercised the right to purchase the property for $800,000. I should add, again, I reviewed the board materials for this particular transaction, and it does, again, explicitly reference the fact that ultimately the property would be sold to the city and be in the city's portfolio. So, same issue, same story. Any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Finkelman? Mr. Dweck?
Confirming there was an appraisal done also commensurate with purchase.
You know, I'm not sure the answer to that, because I think under the circumstances, the library probably didn't have sufficient time.
Oh, right.
Because this was, this was an option, an exercise of an option to meet a purchase price.
But how do you verify that purchase price? Is that,
They had an offer.
I mean, how do you know it's a bona fide
Well,
offer?
it's in writing. I mean, there are written documents that indicate, that there was an offer for $800,000.
Okay, I guess anyway, in any event, DCAS is going to do their own appraisal.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Levin?
So, Mr. Finkelman, you indicated that in your previous testimony that there were 3 libraries that were not owned by the city. We've now taken care of 2 of them. Where's the third?
I wish I were here on the third. Middle Village. My understanding of the issue is OMB hasn't provided funding for the city to purchase that particular branch. So unfortunately, I'm not here on all 3. I would love to be.
Okay, but perhaps that's a partial answer to my question about the first 2. There is a discussion with OMB about whether this transaction, these kinds of transactions.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry if I didn't misunderstood your question. By all means, I mean, we didn't start the process until the funding issue is resolved with OMB as to funds being available for the city to purchase the property from the library. So yeah, that is the case. Unfortunately, not for Middle Village. So.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Efron?
So many of us have read last year and this year about the increase in the capital budget for the libraries. Is there a priority or a capital plan that the Queens Public Library puts out or has internally or that you're aware of that determines whether the acquisition is the priority or the repair of branches is the priority or the expansion is the priority?
It's interesting you mentioned that. I think last week we put up on our public website a listing of all the capital projects that the library is undertaking. There's, I think, 100 of them. It gives you all the details about the status of each one of the capital projects. In terms of prioritizing, I can't say that there is any particular prioritization of, we obviously want, there are certain libraries, new ones that are being built by DDC. Again, because the city is supposed to own the properties, DDC is our construction agency or for purposes of building new libraries. So I would say those are certainly the priorities in neighborhoods where a new library is being built because they need a bigger library or they're really dilapidated old libraries. Those are clearly the priority to get those open as soon as possible.
Can I have a follow-up? But as you described that they used operating expenses for the $3.5 million and the $800,000 purchase, this is the only capital item that would return operating money to the operating budget, correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and let me just follow up on that, because I actually had similar questions. So there was no, on both of these libraries, there was, there was inherent understanding, maybe obligation for the city to purchase the libraries at some point. There was no specific, as I understand it, no specific time deadline for the city to exercise, let's call it, its responsibility to purchase. But is that correct? Was there a requirement that the city purchase at a certain time?
That. I mean, I do think under the 1907 agreement between the city and the library, the city does have responsibility to own the libraries in Queens.
I'm not, right.
In terms of a specific time frame in which the city would have an obligation to own the property, there's nothing explicit in the agreement. And again, it's the very rare exception that this occurs. All the other properties are owned by the city.
No, understood. But as you say, I mean, these two libraries are, the city has agreed to purchase Middle Village, not yet, but that's a negotiation presumably underway or will be underway between Queens Public Library and the city. I guess my question is, given the fact that the city and the Queens Public Library do enter into this negotiation, both with respect to timing and with respect to the city's budget, does that negotiation also, just in follow-up to what Commissioner Efron asked, does that also include a direction to the Queens Public Library of how these funds, this infusion of funds, will be used, or is that strictly go to the library's discretion and can use it any way it wants, as operating money, as endowment, as whatever?
Are you talking about operating funds?
I'm talking about the receipt of these funds for the purchase of these two libraries.
These two particular properties?
Yeah, is there an agreement, or will there be an agreement between the city and Queens Public Library as to how these funds will be deployed by the library, or is it solely and exclusively now will be in the library's discretion how it wants to use them?
I believe it'll be the latter. Because again, I think the notion is it'll be replenishing operating funds that had previously been expended that should have been used for things like programs and operational purposes at the libraries.
Does the library have an endowment?
I don't believe so. You know, I should also add, for the public, it's clearly in the public's interest for the city to own the libraries. For the reason that if budget times do get tight and the library owns property, it would have the legal authority to sell the property and leave a community without a library. Now, I would hope that would never happen, but certainly with city ownership, certainly ensures the existence of
I'm not
the
questioning. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm really my question is really more directed to, since this is a negotiation, both as to timing and ultimately based on DCAS's appraisal as to price, and the city does. Again, just sort of following up on what Commissioner Efron asked, the city is infusing the library system with systems with additional cash, and presumably has an interest in how that those resources get deployed, whether in this particular case, since there's a substantial amount of funds now being directed, whether the city and the library agree on how these particular funds will be utilized.
To my knowledge, there haven't been any such conversations, and it's not to suggest we have a new chairman who I think if there were discussions that the city wanted to have regarding the use of these particular funds, I'm sure he would be open to having that discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dweck?
perhaps just to put it in perspective, how much did the library get from New York City, Queens Library get from New York City in 2015?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure the exact amount.
What is the overall budget for the Queens Library?
I think it's around 130 to 140 million.
Historically, what percentage do you?
The city provides 85 to 90% of the funding.
Most of the money generally with libraries comes from the city. It's an annual dance, trying to get money through various budget negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical, you show kind of your salaries, how much of it's going to be invested in the salaries, the maintenance of the properties. You know, you present your budget for how much money you're going to need, and typically you don't get all that you want, but, and the city is contractually obliged to pay for what the library needs to expend in terms of maintenance and support of the library, so.
It's my understanding that the current administration is very pro.
Yeah, I think we fared well the last couple of years, and as you mentioned, particularly capital funding was more than it has been in quite some time, which we're very pleased about.
Mr. Cirillo?
And I'm not sure this changes the, sort of the direction of the conversation or gets to the bottom of it, but is, to the best of your knowledge, are the funds coming directly or exclusively from the administration, or is it a combination of sources, the council, the borough president, and the mayor? Do you know that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Again, it's, you know, OMB that has allocated the funds, where they allocated. I have to back up on this because, you know, when I testified at the community board, they were very frustrated because this funding was made available by OMB in 2014, and here we are in the middle of 2016, and they said, why are you here? We thought this had already happened. So this was funding that OMB has already set aside in 2014 for the purchase of these two libraries. Where the funds came from, I'm
Yeah,
not in a position
I
to
only
say.
asked that question because it could connect to the question that the chair asked about, is there a certain, you know, where the money was coming from may have been tied to certain things in the future from wherever it was coming from. As we know, the sources sometimes tie sort of issues and desires to them for whatever the purpose. The council member may have certain things they want the money to go to, if they're going to put that money in, or the borough president may. So I was only seeing if there was some correlation between where the money was, how the money was being amassed, and then where it was coming from, and whether or not they potentially could have, you know, issues that they wanted to earmark it for specific programs or uses of any.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, the intent of my question is, do these funds go to, as realized, go to these communities, or they just basically part of the general fund of the library?
They would go into the operating fund.
So
But-
they're not necessarily designated for Rosedale or?
No.
Ms. Efron?
I just want to be clear, my line of questioning was specifically to make sure that we all were aware that it was capital money being used to replenish operating. And in both cases, I would hope that the city would not reduce either the operating nor the capital based on that.
I appreciate that, and we hope that's not the case either, that's for sure.
Any other questions for Ms. Finkelman? Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
And again, Paul Costa, do you want to get into this rabbit warren? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? And if not, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 18, CD2, C160249, PCQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the site selection and acquisition of property concerning the NYPD vehicle storage facility.
First speaker is Gregory DeMesa. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's correct.
From the NYPD.
Yes, I'm
Welcome.
the director, good morning, everyone. I'm the Director of Fleet Services Division for the NYPD. I'm here to testify about two lots that we utilize. They're on 54th Avenue in Maspeth, which are nearby my largest shop, the Central Repair Shop. There's charts up here that show exactly where the lots are. These lots are used by us to stage vehicles that are waiting repair at the large Central Repair Shop. And also, we stage salvaged vehicles there, vehicles that are put out of service and waiting to go to the city's auction site. We keep them off-street in these two lots. We can fit approximately 200 vehicles in the lots, and we've been utilizing these lots actually since the first one in 2011, and the second one was added in 2013 under a license agreement. These lots are located 1 block from Central Repair, which is my largest shop, and situated, the lots are also situated among other vehicle repair businesses, so it's kind of fits in with where they are and our usage of them. I think that's all I have to say. I'd be happy to take any questions on our use of the lots, and there's a DCAS representative here to talk about any real estate transaction questions.
Mr. Knuckles.
Well, maybe I'll wait for DCAS.
Any questions for Mr. DeMesa? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, Ms. Lazarson.
Thank you. Good morning. I can respond to any of the real estate-related questions. I'll start by saying, as you just heard, the NYPD has been operating on these lots since 2011 and 2013. The proposal now is, and this has been under a license agreement with an option to lease. With ULURP approval secured, we will be exercising the lease option. For the lots, it will be a 10-year transaction with renewal options and city standard cancellation options. There are no proposed improvements. The improvements to the site were completed under the license agreement when the NYPD took possession of the lots some time ago. Those improvements included some fencing, some lighting, pavement. This was actually dirt at the time. That's about it, nothing material. So may I answer any questions?
Questions to Ms. Lazarson? Mr. Knuckles.
Well, I was just wondering about the protracted, what seems to be a protracted length of the licenses, and why it's taken so long to come to.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the straight-up answer is we can't answer that. The parties at the time are no longer here to respond why it took so long. Why
Parties as in owners?
No. The representatives from DCAS that may have been involved in the original leasing transaction, the license transaction. Our standard processes are relatively swift. When we have a license with a lease option, there's a definitive period of time that we are working within to try and get to exercising that option. Why it took so long, we don't know. What I can tell you is our process and procedures, however, in looking at these things, caught it. So we requested that the ULURP application be filed and moved forward.
Just a quick follow-up. You know, the city has had a presence in Maspeth, Queens, for these kinds of uses for decades. And I think all indications is that will continue to be the case. Is there any consideration to acquiring, as in owning these spaces as opposed to continually leasing them?
So we are routinely, whenever we have a need, when a lease is coming up, or if we have a new need, and we're searching in these areas, it is a routine dialogue. When we find something that is available, whether or not the property is positioned for lease or for sale, the dialogue begins. And even if it's not positioned for sale, we're asking the question sometimes depending on our investment and commitment. There may be some reasons with different agencies that we are not as quick to request a purchase opportunity based on how an agency operates and its need to have an ownership interest. And other agencies like the NYPD, sometimes that is a good idea. But again, it just depends on the dialogue with the available opportunity at the time.
Are these, maybe it's in here, I just didn't notice it, are these parcels, i.e. Lot 75 and Lot 80, are they contiguous?
They are. They're absolutely contiguous. In fact, this is tough to see. They're really right here. They're just right next to each other.
Right.
And the owner actually has a building right across the way. The owner, Mount Zion, they operate the Mount Zion Cemetery that you can see here. They really had no use for it in the general community. This falls within, I should mention, you're probably aware, this falls within the Masbeth IBZ, which is, to a bit of information, one of the largest IBCs in the city, about 570 acres, give or take. So they didn't really have an interest for it. It was raw dirt, and being where the IBZ is with the residential adjacency, the preservation of this kind of a use was important to the community as well as the owners. So it was a very well-received use at the time, and our expansion, obviously, from the first lot that we took to the second was well-received and not objected to in any way. Not going anywhere, yep.
Any other questions for Ms. Lasserson? Thank you, Ms. Lasserson.
Okay, thank you.
And is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? And if not, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 19, CD1, C150135, ZMQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for an amendment to the zoning map concerning the 38th Street and 31st Avenue rezoning.
First speaker is Richard Lobel.
Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Richard Lobel from Sheldon Lobel PC. It's good to see you all. And as the Chair said, we're here for the 38th Street and 31st Avenue rezoning. As I'm aware from the review session, there's relatively few issues with regards to the rezoning. Briefly stated, in 2010, in the Astoria rezoning, the city rezoned approximately 238 blocks or portions of blocks, and in that rezoning, the center lines of the blocks were generally used as the boundary of the zoning district. Well, in a number of blocks, including this block, the zoning lots on the block don't exactly coincide with the center line. So as in many large-scale rezonings, the Queen's office, for convenience sake, used that center line, but as in this case, there's about 8 lots which were not exactly coincident with that center line boundary, and thus the zoning district boundary cut those properties into portions. So we sat down with the Queen's office of the Department of City Planning, and basically everyone was in agreement that this was, in essence, a correction to the zoning map. And so we've gone through the process, have had positive meetings and votes from the Community Board 1, as well as the Queensborough President's Office. As a technical matter, the zoning district boundary here would be shifted 40 feet. So whereas it's currently 100 feet, the R6B is 100 feet in from 38th Street, it would now be 140 to exactly coincide with, or approximately exactly coincide with the rear district boundary. In the immediate sense of what this would do for lots 75 and 76, which are highlighted in red here, the applicant's property, this would essentially amount to an additional 1,650 square feet of building area. It's kind of a minor increase as far as the development site's concerned. There'd be an additional anywhere from 3 to 6 units. I think the 6 would be the maximum, but there actually, in effect, will be 3. They're going to be building 23 units instead of 20 units. Here, I guess it's actually a nice story in that the applicant here has built several buildings on this block, including the 4-story building next door. He was approached by the owners of the residential homes on the properties, on these 2 properties, and basically entered into an arrangement with 2 elderly women to remain in the property for what amounted to a couple of years until such time as they were ready to leave the property. So we had a nice long time frame for this rezoning. We took advantage of that, and now we're at the point where we'd like to proceed with the development. Again, very simply, the development site consists of these 2 lots. There would be a total of 8 lots affected, and pursuant to the environmental assessment statement and the reasonable worst-case development scenario, in actuality, these would be the only 2 lots which would be redeveloped in accordance with this rezoning. The 5 of the lots are already developed well over the 2 FAR that exists in the R6B, and the other 2 lots are burdened by multiple cross easements, which would make development there highly infeasible. So that's essentially the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Lobel? Ms. Levin, and then Ms. Efron, and then Ms. Deluz.
Yes, Mr. Lobel, as you're certainly aware, the community board had 3 conditions to their recommendation, which honestly go far beyond the scope of what we're considering, or able to consider here in a map change. But in
Sure.
the spirit of good neighborliness, what's your client going to do to address those issues?
In the spirit of good neighborliness, we are complying. So we will be screening the rear portion of the property in accordance with the community board recommendations, and we will be providing correspondence with the community board in order to have a dialogue and to enable community board members and community members to approach the development team in the case that there's any concerns during the course of construction. George Elliott is a representative of the applicant who is here with us today, and George has a longstanding history in this area as well as on this block. He has several properties under development on this block alone, has maintained an excellent relationship with the community and seeks to continue to do so.
Okay. More immediately, how about those neighbors on 37th that are going to be directly abutting the property? They have some concerns about their retaining wall.
Interestingly, Mr. Elliott, in having it conducted construction on the adjacent lot to the north, is well aware of those issues. The truth here is that given the incredible depth of the lot at 140 feet, our construction is even on our own property, is at a minimum 60 feet from the rear lot line, and then there's an additional offset from that. So while the community board expressed concerns, and while there has been construction in the area generally, where there have been developers who have not been concerned with the surrounding area, this will not be an issue, and we more proactively will ensure that it is not an issue.
Ms. Efron, then Ms. Delos. then
Commissioner
Ms.
Levin asked the question I had.
Okay. Ms. Mr. Cantor.
As the rezoning issue, will the statement that you just made regarding that rear wall still okay?
Yes, Mr. Elliott and I talked about this at length. So first of all, we have the benefit of the previous experience he's had with the homes in the rear. The offset, just to give a rough idea of the dimensions, the front yard is approximately 10 feet. The building itself is approximately 62 feet, which is 72 feet. And the rear lot line goes anywhere from 138 to 140 feet. So we've really almost got 70 feet to the rear lot line here. And the rear yard is not going to be used for any buildings. So we're very confident with regards to the nature of the construction, to our ability to, there's going to be no impact on the retaining wall, but we're happy to engage in that dialogue with the community board and make sure of that.
Why are you not using all of that area?
Well, I think that we're going to max out on our floor area within our envelope, within that front 70 feet of the property. We're also going to use the rear of the property for parking, which is permitted under the zoning. So it's a convenient way to offset from the rear.
So there won't be any digging? Significant digging?
Not significant digging in the rear area.
Okay. My regards to your father.
Thank you.
Any other questions to Mr. Lobel? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next speaker is the previous.
Chair, I would ask that Mr. Elliott is available for questions, and should there be no questions, we're happy to.
Well, are there questions from Mr. Elliott, from any one of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Elliott gets a free ride. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 20, 21, and 22. Calendar number 20, CD2, C160103, ZMQ. Calendar number 21, N160101, ZRQ. Calendar number 22, N160102, ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning the Barnett Avenue rezoning.
First speaker is, am I reading this correctly, Kara McAteer? You're not Kara McAteer.
I don't look like Kara McAteer. I'm Adam Weinstein. I'm the president of Phipps Houses. Kara's yielding her time. Thank you for having us. The project is located on Barnett Avenue. I can give you quick overview and then leave time for questions, because I imagine there'll be some. So, this is Barnett Avenue in the Sunnyside neighborhood of Queens. This is Barnett Avenue, 52nd Street, 50th Street. It is a parcel of land that Phipps Houses, not-for-profit organization in New York that's devoted to affordable housing, bought in 1953, awaiting this moment to rezone it for affordable housing. And that's actually not really a joke. That's exactly what we do, and that's why we bought the property. It has been used as a public parking lot in the interim to pay the taxes. It adjoins a 1930s vintage development that we built, our oldest existing affordable housing complex in Sunnyside, designed by Clarence Stein with gardens by Marjorie Sewell Cotley. We call it Phipps Garden Apartments. Everyone in the neighborhood calls it Phipps. And we can talk about parking afterwards, but this is the site context. This is, the heart of the gardens here. Of note, this is an 11-story building here. Bear that in mind for the further discussion. I think you've probably seen the zoning maps. The current zoning is M11. The proposed is an MX district, M11 R6 equivalent. Here's a render looking eastward on Barnett. Barnett runs east-west. The building is to the north of our existing Phipps Garden Apartments. This is the shortest section of the Phipps Garden Apartments complex. The building occupies approximately 500 feet of frontage. Of note, we've widened the sidewalks considerably. We have depicted a universal pre-K in the ground floor of about 4,000 square feet. There may be other community needs that we would certainly consider addressing, and that's something that came out at the borough president and at the community board hearings. On the ground floor of the building, 7-story, 8-story street wall, 9-story, 10-story setbacks. And I'll show you a diagram showing the overall setback from the street. Here's that same in plan. So 7-story wings, 8-story frontage, 9-story wing, 9-story wing, 10-story center column, grand entry. Sidewalk is 15 feet. In deference to sort of the Queens type of this neighborhood, there's a front yard, essentially. 24 feet from sidewalk to entry, so overall almost 40 feet from street bed to front entry. At its narrowest point, 22 feet from street bed to front entry. So the entire building has been set back maximally. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein.
Thank you.
Questions? Let us start with Ms. Deleuze.
Hi, Adam, thank you for being here. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about why the design, why the frontage is 500 feet, and what attempts might have been made to try to differentiate it, break it up. I know it's a unique site.
Right.
If you could talk a bit about that, that would be helpful.
The site is 500 feet. The building itself does not cover the full 500 feet.
Okay.
So there's a segment here, the site narrows too much. The main objective is to produce affordable housing units. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's a valuable site. We don't want to sell it. We'd rather develop it. Developing it is a significant impairment of value. We want to address, to close that gap and make it financially feasible to build affordable housing. I could give you lots of other planning reasons why, but that's the essential reason. And if we felt that it was in some way detrimental, we obviously wouldn't be doing it. What is on the other side is a railroad track, so it actually acts as a sound barrier. If it were south and thus limiting the light to another location, I would have a different feeling about it. On the other side of the railroad track, is an enormous expanse, few acres of Home Depot parking. So I didn't see honestly, from my perspective, if I were living in this building right here, looking out, I would lose a 15-degree, maybe 12-degree azimuth of sky exposure, but I would be denied the opportunity to look in a junkyard, basically, in a parking lot.
Mr. Cantor.
If you consider that an opportunity.
Mr. Weinstein, you do very well in presentations. To continue the conversation with regard to that building, nominally speaking, it's 400 feet long,
Yes.
which could be oppressive if it were not, if it did not have some variation. For a red brick box running 400 feet, I would kind of jump up and down. There was an indication on the Monday session that there has been some articulation of the building. And in addition, there appears to be variations in brickwork as well.
Correct.
To break it up, that's good. What concerns me is there was also a reference in the conversation that this is preliminary and things might change here, there, and around the corner. And I'd like to have some assurance from you that the articulation and the variation in facade will remain as part of this program.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Knuckles, then Ms. Levin.
Adam, how are you?
Thank you.
Both the community board and the borough president, raised significant issues about affordability and the need for deeper income levels. What is your response to that critique?
Sure. We are prepared to change the affordability of the 100% AMI band. HPD's programs permit it, and move that entire band to 80%, either distribute between 180 or move the entire band to 80% of AMI, so that a quarter of the building would be affordable to households at 80% of AMI. A quarter of the building would be for households below 60% of AMI, and half of the building would be for households at 130 AMI. You might ask, I'll anticipate your question,
Right.
why not move the 130s to 100? The impact on the financing of the project, on the fees, as I've said at every community board hearing, and every borough president hearing, we respect this process, and I'm genuinely interested in the feedback, provided at the end of the day we have a feasible project. Moving the 130s to 100 renders the project infeasible.
130 is 95?
So 130, I like relating 130 AMI to street rents, because that's the important feature. And we modeled this, street rent meaning unrestricted market rent in the submarket.
Right.
So, and then we went through this analysis, what informed this analysis is what we did at Hunters Point South for buildings A and B, which we did in partnership with Monadnock and Related. And it was very, very meaningful to us to make sure that even the highest income band is below unrestricted market rent in this neighborhood. Those rents, which obviously the rents are based on household size and apartment size, are a discount to market of, depending on apartment size, between 10 and 20%. Today, over time, importantly, that gap widens. And this neighborhood, this community board has experienced is one of the highest, the index of change in rent in this community board is one of the highest in the city. Of all the 51 community boards, I think it's 12th, maybe even into the single digits. So making sure not just that rents are affordable today, but over time, the gap between unrestricted market rent and restricted affordable rent, even at 130 AMI, while still starting below, while that gap may be 20% today or 15%, depending on unit type, I'll warrant to you that in a decade, it'll be 30% discount to market. And that resource is available essentially permanently, so that the next neighborhood that blows up, because right now in our Phipps Garden apartment complex, which is naturally occurring affordable housing with rent-regulated tenants, we're getting relocatees from Brooklyn. That's who's coming in and saying, this is so affordable. So I want to provide that so that we're all thinking about this, not just today, but 10 years from now, and 20 years, and I would say, I've probably said it to you before, there's the long money, there's the short money, and there's the catatonic money. And Phipps is the catatonic money. We want to be here 50 years from now saying this is a great development, still providing affordable units at a significant discount to market.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin, and then Ms. Efron.
Well, I hesitate to move from that really essential question about this project, which I'm really glad you covered, to ask about the displaced parking.
Right, sure.
Currently significant parking on
Yep.
the site. What's the
Yep, yep,
plan?
yep.
It's obviously a big concern for the community board. What's the plan for those, the cars, who currently
Yep.
parks there and where are they going?
Sure. Let me ask the last question, answer the last question first. Currently, about 100, or there's room for about 223 spaces in that lot. About 100 to 125, depending on year, have been residents in this zip code. The balance are trucks. If you live in this neighborhood, I'll give you a little secret. There are people who live here who rent space from Home Depot overnight because that parking lot is empty. So in terms of off-street parking, that's the main resource. You know, our environmental review did not show a parking need. I'll have to say that for the record. You know, and people will, anyone who tries to park a car on an alternate side day in New York City will debate that point. Because anecdotally, it's always hard to find a space. The new parking lot in this building accommodates, I think it's 101 striped. We will attend the lot. Thus, we can operate up to 199 without, I forget what the permit is, and we will. So there will be, whereas there are currently 223 spaces, there will be 199. If 50% of the residents, which is a very high number, use parking in this building, that leaves approximately 100 spaces available. We would give a preference to residents of this zip code. And we can. It's not counted in the tax credit basis of the project, it's just parking. So we would give them a parking preference. And that could be more than and so, in my view, it's roughly the same as where we are today. Roughly 100 to 125 people in this zip code currently use this lot. If 40% of the residents of the building come and want to rent parking in the building, then we've met the current need.
Ms. Efron.
Thank you for clarifying that about the parking. I, for one, was not aware that it was almost all residents, which is very interesting. So if Brooklyn's characterized by brownstones,
So, not almost all residents. That's the opposite of what I said.
no, of how you would take care of the residents. I'm sorry, I was rushing ahead to my next question, which is really that if Brooklyn's characterized by brownstones, Sunnyside is really characterized by garden apartments, including Phipps. And there are no renderings that show the ground floor experience. You've mentioned the front yards, but it would be really useful to know how you plan to treat that garden experience or the garden apartment experience, since these are streets that residents do walk through.
Yeah. So one feature to deal with that is that we have, to the degree that we're not using it for ground floor community facility, we have located maisonette units on the ground floor, each of which has a front yard. Very familiar typology on these blocks. And again, in deference to Mr. Cantor's comment, as the building, cups sort of is a concave shape, those front yards get larger. There's also, importantly, a setback, a green space setback at the street level, which again is a typology that we'll see here. It's not really, the goal was try to create a ground floor entry level engagement with people walking down now a sidewalk that doesn't exist. I'll say just parenthetically, an important feature of this is to recreate what is now a street that blends into a pothole dirt section that people park on. So there really, there's been complaints in this community, rightfully so. We would add our voice to those complaints about Barnett Avenue being, a place with lots of with speedy cars trying to get to 46th, I think, where the bridge goes under the railroad tracks, and no curb. So replacing the creating a streetscape, really recreating a streetscape is primary to the objective of the development. It's hard to see these renders at the bottom, but this one here gives you a sense, a little bit more of a sense of what the streetscape would look like at the front entry. And we've tried to create interest in the front entry by creating some grandeur, a big awning, that calls that this is the entry to the building. Does that sort of answer your question?
It does, that there is a concern that it is a long block or an uninterrupted block, so if the entrance, the grand entrance is only in the middle, what happens at the rest of the block really should matter now that you are creating essentially a walk for people. But I think you understand my point.
So in between the entry and a community facility most likely located at this end, you'll have a community facility and you'll have units, though not entered from the street, will have front yards that appear to be entered from the street.
And will those be maintained by FIPS?
Yes, those are not for sale units. Those are rental units. They're entered from the central, to preserve security, they're entered from the central core of the building.
Is that fine? That's it?
That's it, yes, thank you.
Mr. Cantor, then Ms. Delos.
I should have asked this question earlier. What is the treatment on the other side of the building?
Brick.
Similar,
Yes.
or is it a flat?
Actually, I don't know. It's broken up. It's broken up in various brick colors. Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Delos.
That's an important question, by the way. A lot of affordable housing projects really cheapen the rear side of the building. Here, it's seen from the LIRR, but it's meaningful to us that the building be beautiful.
I've had a thing with regard to a project in Queens, not far from the stadiums, which turned out to be looks like a 400-foot long white monolith.
And the reality is IFIS doesn't wear well.
Thank you.
Tucco doesn't wear well, not in this climate.
Ms. Delos.
Adam, I just wanted to touch on a couple of the things that the community board brought up, which may or may not be things that you're actively in discussion with them about. But one, I just want to understand what the environmental issues are on the site.
Sure.
And then there are a number of things obviously related to union labor and commitment to working on sidewalk improvements around the rest of Barnett Avenue, the siting of a middle school. Some things which are, considering the community facility space is only 4,800 square feet, I guess I don't know if there are other resources that PIPS brings to the table in that discussion and that's why it's mentioned here. Any context would be helpful.
Sure, I can help with that. What was your first one?
Environmental.
Right. So the adjoining property to our east, here, is a former dry cleaner. Operated as a dry cleaner between 1952, thank you, and 2007. It is an inactive, Class 2 inactive New York State hazardous waste site. The New York State DEC is addressing it through what they call their Superfund program. It's not federal Superfund, it's an inactive waste site. Some of the dry cleaning chemicals were detected at a 26-foot depth of having leached up into the groundwater underneath this property. Our building only goes to a 15-foot depth. Notwithstanding, part of the zoning is an E-designation. We'll remediate with a remedial action work plan and a construction health and safety plan under the supervision of OER. We'll put in a soil vapor barrier just in case that will prevent any vapors from entering the site.
Okay, great.
That's number one.
And you're right, thank you, that's very helpful. And so you'll be able to get the indemnification through the city then as a result of that. That's great. And then the other piece had to do with the union labor point and then commitment, the context around the middle school construction and what role FIPS may have in that, and then other improvements along Barnett Avenue.
So, we're an open shop organization. We're not a builder, so I don't really have a dog in this fight. To the degree that labor costs really matter in producing affordable housing, we would propose to bid this as open shop. There are probably going to be folks here speaking about building staff. We believe the right time to address how we employ our employees, and we do have a lot of 32BJ employees working for FIPS. So happens that the building across the street is not a 32BJ site. We pay as if they are 32BJ employees. We provide benefits as if they are union employees. But we think the right time to address that is when we're hiring, not during a rezoning. I can't dance around that one. And then, how we organize and how we provide employment. I don't think anyone would say we're not a good employer, including Kyle Gregg and Mike Fishman. So, infrastructure improvements. Look, we would add our voice to those who believe that this neighborhood is. I think transit is a particular problem. Obviously, this organization, this municipal corporation doesn't have as much of a say in transit as it should. The impacts, though, on ridership and the impact on schools do not trigger much concern. I can appreciate how concerned this community board is with regard to how much growth there has been in Community Board 2, particularly west of here, along the waterfront. We would add our voice to ensuring that residents of our building have school seats, but the reality is it'll add 3 seats per grade. So it's not a substantial impact, and honestly, I don't know what FIPS can do to change that. We can't accommodate a school on the site, obviously. And SCA wouldn't want it, to be perfectly honest. Street improvements. I think we're addressing 500 feet of half of the problem on Barnett Avenue. I mean, maybe it's a 1,500-foot block, but the block between 52nd and, where's the next cross-through? I think it is at 53rd, is in relatively good shape. It's the block south of here, where the uses are kind of construction, storage, scaffolding storage. There's a vacant building at the corner. It narrows out considerably. And then directly across the street is a private park, a park association. So, I would love DOT to address that, but I don't know that we can.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi. One quick question about those front yards that are created as a result of the setback. There's no barrier to the usage of those yards. It's sort of just accessory open space. Is it going to?
No, they'll be enclosed with a 4-foot fence. So they'll be visible, but they'll be exclusive use for the unit owner.
For that individual unit owner?
Sorry, not owner. Tenant.
Okay, for that individual tenant.
Correct. It's a small yard. I mean, we're talking 7 feet 6 inches here. 11 foot 1 inch. Well, no, that's the community facility. So it's essentially a 7-foot. Think of it almost as an areaway with green space. So enough room for a table and some chairs to sit on in your front, like a front stoop almost.
Mm-hmm.
But it's private space.
Yeah, which is a little different than what you encounter in that neighborhood. Generally you don't have, that front space being utilized in that way.
We likened it to what you'll see in the gardens, where you have a relatively small front yard leading up to a stoop, right?
Which is
The
generally
staircase.
landscaped.
As this would be.
Are there going to be particular
The barrier
rules?
would probably be hedge.
Okay.
So.
Rules associated with what can and cannot occur in that space? I'm just thinking, what's to keep people from using it as storage?
Yes.
Which we certainly would not like.
Absolutely. Bike storage. We would enforce house rules. And as the landlord, we can.
Okay, thank you.
I have the same concern, interestingly, about balconies. I had a titanic
Oh, yeah.
argument with, what's his name? Sir Nicholas Grimshaw, when we designed the project Via Verde. I did not want balconies on the facade of the building. They're on the interior courtyard, and we enforce very strictly the placement of stuff on the balcony.
Yeah, especially here because it's the ground floor environment, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Weinstein? Thank you. Next speaker is Maribel Greenberger from Philip Habib, and she is here to answer any environmental questions. I don't believe she has a statement, but if there are environmental questions for Ms. Greenberger, do I hear any?
Well, actually, sorry.
Here we go.
Sorry.
Ms. Deluz.
Sorry.
Ms. Greenberger, step up.
In anticipation that the 100% of AMI ban goes to 80% of AMI, what, do you have an estimate, or could you provide an estimate as to how that might impact on the parking demand?
So typically, the parking demand is lower when the income band is lower, so it would result in a lower overall parking utilization. Right now in the area, it's about 0.4 autos per household, so it's a peak demand right now of under 100 spaces, so that might be even lower in that case.
That's what I anticipated then. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Greenberger? Thank you, Ms. Greenberger.
Thank you.
Next speaker is in opposition, Darrell Shannon from SEIU 32BJ. Mr. Shannon? Ms. Shannon? Mr. Shannon? Here?
We have a testimony.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Left? Okay. We have written testimony from him. Next speaker is Eli Mondesir from 32BJ. Welcome, Mr. Mondesir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon.
Okay. I'm a residential building service worker, and I'm 32 BJ member. I work at Phipps Complex in Kips Bay. I'm here today testifying on behalf of my union and in support of the workers who will someday work at Phipps new developments. Phipps has stated mission of helping the people of New York City build healthy, more prosperous communities. It is time that Phipps recognizes that good jobs are a key part of communities, of fulfilling, this mission. Phipps should commit to creating good jobs across the portfolio. Over the last few months, 32BJ members have been at a community board meeting about 50-25 Barnett. At each meeting, we have called for Phipps houses to commit to creating family-sustaining building service jobs at the proposed development. So far, they have not made this commitment. Earlier this year, 32BJ also reached out repeatedly to Phipps about its plans in East New York. Phipps owns the largest parcel of land in the East New York recognizing area. We asked Phipps to commit to creating good local jobs in the new buildings in East New York. So far, they have not made a commitment. 32BJ supports responsible new development. We understand the need to increase affordable housing options for New Yorkers as housing prices have risen across the city. My union brothers and sisters have struggled to stay in their homes even with the good wages. But if we want to maintain a truly diverse city, we also need to increase the number of high-quality jobs available to workers in New York. The impact of a proposed project has on the local economy and specifically on jobs for local residents should be considered for all new developments. We want to stand behind FIP's efforts to address this city's affordable housing crisis.
A couple more sentences, Mr. Mondesir. Pick and choose whichever ones you want. So.
Can I continue? Thank you.
2 more sentences.
Okay. Okay, let me take this one here. FIPS recently put the building where I worked up for sale. My coworkers and I are calling for FIPS to commit to selling the building to a responsible developer. But more than that, we are calling on FIPS to create good jobs at all its new developments. Before allowing this project to move forward, the City Planning Commission should make sure FIPS has made such a commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just ask you a question, because I thought I heard Mr. Weinstein testify that across the street from this proposed project at Phipps Gardens, even though 32BJ does not organize that building, Phipps pays the same wages and benefits that it does in 32BJ organized buildings. Is that an issue that's in dispute, if not, is that an issue that only, from your perspective, applies to that development but not to others? And maybe you could get back to us, or the union could get back to us on that.
Yes, I can, but
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Mondesir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the hearing is closed. And Madam Secretary, is there any other matter to come before us today?
No, Chairman Weisbrod.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I am sure there is no opposition. Thank you very much.